I wanted to give a quick shout out to Eduardo's earlier project, Static Man app, which is a static comments platform. So Paul Kinlan, who's a Googler, uses Discuss comments because he uses Jekyll on GitHub like a lot of us do. And if you look at every request on his site, this is his content. So pink is images, yellow is scripts. There's the call to discuss comments. And all of that is discuss analytics, adverts, all sorts of horrible things. And you can't block it with a content security policy because it's loaded in an iframe. And you can't configure your own HTTP headers through GitHub pages. So you can only use the meta tag, so you can't stop it. So using, oh look, and Facebook is being loaded as well. So using Static Man app is going to be an awesome way to get rid of all of that cruft. It adds about 5 seconds of JavaScript processing on a desktop PC when you load his blog post. Anyway, that was an aside.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. It's been nice to have you talk. Right, anyway, so next up we have Simon Hearne, long-term friend of mine, obviously been known in the web performance space for quite some time. I'm sure he's going to have a really interesting talk here about these 25,000 unique devices, not just devices, isn't it? So there you go, there you go. You've got unique there, but on your header slide it was. There you go, look.
Anyone know how to use a Mac?
Yeah, so 25,000 devices, they might all be the same, Simon, that's all I'm saying. All right, there you go. Right.
I'm trying to get full screen. Unlike Perry, I do have a Mac. I've only had it for a week, and multiple screens on a Mac is not as easy as I'm used to. So there must be a menu up here.
Double click on that. Yeah, title bar. Title bar.
Yeah?
Well, oh,
Really?
What is going on there? What's going on there? See, I've got all this to come.
Now, how do I full screen it? Green button. That one. No, that seems
Look
too easy.
at that.
I never use the green button because it doesn't work as you'd expect, because you lose your title bar and then you have to hover on it to get it back. Right, I think I'm ready.
You ready? Is that the start?
Wow.
There you go. There's the start. We're ready.
Awesome.
Right, everyone, Simon, say hello to him.
So I'm put at a distinct disadvantage after to follow Eduardo, because I don't have a great open source project to share with you. What I do have to share with you is a bit of a story about the experiences I have with my clients. So I'm a performance consultant, and my job is to help people make their websites faster, from kind of smallish retailers to biggish retailers. And I also have 2 children, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And as such, I watch an inordinate amount of children's TV. And as you watch children's TV, you start to recognize certain patterns. And one of them is the 5 stages of grief. And they actually put this through in Peppa Pig. So if you watch some episodes of Peppa Pig, you can identify the 5 stages of grief. And no word of a lie, I was watching Peppa Pig yesterday and rewrote this whole talk because I discovered this fact. So there are 25,000 unique Android devices in the market as of the end of 2016. 25,000. That's globally. There aren't so many Xiaomi's in the UK. But that's a large market share, or a large number of devices to have to optimize for. iPhones, I put ... because I couldn't find a picture of one with the iPhone 7 in it. But who here has a mobile lab? Oh, that's about half the room. And who here has more Android devices than iPhone devices in their mobile lab? That's 3 of the people who answered before. The problem we have is iPhones are ubiquitous. If you look in your analytics, it will say that you have all iPhone customers, so you test on iPhone devices. I'm here to tell you that that's wrong. Your analytics are fake news. So I've covered this point, and the 5 stages of grief. I've managed to fit my story kind of into the 5 stages of grief, but bear with me because it's a bit messy. But you've got denial. We don't have Android traffic. We've barely got mobile traffic, so let's not care about it. Bargaining. Can't we just give them an app or something? Anger. Why is Android so slow? And do we really have to test on a Moto G1? Yes, you do. Depression. Just giving up. We'll ignore Android traffic for now. Lots of nodding heads. And acceptance. OK, we do have customers who want to use Android devices and buy stuff on our website, or consume our content, or view our ads and generate us revenue. And the first one we get is we don't have much smartphone traffic. And I find this interesting because about 90% of the UK population, internet-enabled population, are smartphone-enabled. It means that, oh, hello. Perry, could you stop tweeting, please? I don't know how to turn that off. So you can expect a lot of your traffic to come from smartphones. We have customers that have 30% of their traffic from smartphones who sell things online. And we have customers who have 70% traffic from smartphones who sell things online. What do you think the difference is? It's denial. So this is the real stats from 3 UK retailers. Red is mobile traffic as a percentage. So you've got 27% on the left, you've got close on 60% in the middle, and you've got 36% on the right. Which of these sites do you think is the fastest? The middle one. And it's actually quite a stark difference. So taking the median DOM content loaded time, a metric that's relatively representative across all websites. The middle one is 1.8 seconds. This is a fast website. The left, which has the smallest amount of mobile traffic, happens to be the slowest site. Correlation or causation? Oh, Andy. And what we see time and time again is that retailers, it's quite niche retailers, there's quite a few of them though, who have faster mobile experiences have more smartphone traffic. And at this point, you start speaking to people and saying, your mobile traffic is only 30%. Yeah, we don't optimize for mobile because we don't get much traffic. Hang on a minute. And I went to see a retailer a couple of years ago, and I heard this story. A contractor came in and said, I looked at their device lab, I looked at their testing methodology, and they didn't have anything testing iPad 1s. And this is when iPad 1 was only about 3 years old. And they asked the client why they didn't test an iPad 1. It's because we don't get any traffic from iPad 1s. So she brought out her iPad 1, clicked on the URL, and it crashed Safari. So we have to be aware that analytics lies to us, which is great for me because I can make up my own lies to mask the other lies. And the next one, which is really common, is Android doesn't convert as well as iPhone. I don't know about you, I don't have my phone in my pocket. I'm an Android user. Can I have a hands up for Android users? Oh, just over 50%. Android and iPhone users? A few, and iPhone users? Wow, that means everyone's put their hand up, which is rare for me to ask questions and have everyone put their hands up. So in this room, relatively tech savvy, we're quite fond of Android. And we won't all have the most expensive Android device in the market. Let's ask Perry what device he has.
I've got a Moto 4G.
A Moto 4G, which is under £200?
No, it was over 200.
Ah, you got ripped off. But the point is, if you want to buy a smartphone and you don't want to get into a contract, or you aren't able to because you've had issues with county court judgments, or you don't have good credit, you can't get a contract. Sorry, Perry. You tend to buy a phone. You'll buy a phone off Amazon. And if you look at Amazon sales figures on mobile devices, it's all the £100 to £200 Android devices because they're accessible, especially for young people or people with poor credit. Which kind of leads you to think this may be true, because people who have these devices don't have much money. But I'm willing to bet the people in this room are kind of in the top 10, 20% of income in the country. And the stats don't hold up. As of the end of 2015, and this is a trend going towards positive, the difference between Android and iOS conversion rate was 5%. That's 5%, not 5 percentage points, 5%. So Android and iOS conversion at a global scale is about even. So if someone says, oh, well, our Android users convert half as well as our iOS users, it means it's their problem, not the people who have the devices. OK, moving on to, we don't have much Android traffic, so we don't have to care about it. Eduardo used this stat earlier. Everyone in a talk about web performance in the last 6 months has used this stat. 53% of mobile visits over 3 seconds are lost. And that's like proper lost. That's like not even a bounce. That's silent echoes in the world of analytics. That's a person has clicked on an advert, given up after 3 seconds and clicked back. And Google knows this because they own DoubleClick and analytics, and they can see you've paid for an ad click as a retailer, but you never got the impression, which is quite bold of them to admit. But it means that your analytics are skewed towards faster experiences. And if you think of a retailer, which one of those earlier pie charts was this, their median page load time for iOS devices is under 4 seconds. Not great, but pretty good. Compared to Android, which is 8.8. 50% of their Android users are having a page load time worse than about 9 seconds. So how many of those are not even hitting the site? And that's assuming these statistics are skewed towards the positive. So your Android stats are probably underrepresented. Android users are sensitive, like me, but quite forgiving. So this is a graph of session length by page load time. So blue is Android. Android users consume more content. And this is true across almost all of our customers. Android users consume more content, but is a shift. Android users get a worse experience, but they put up with it. And this is a point that I hope I come to now. Nope. Bargaining. So I've done denial, bargaining. It doesn't matter about Android performance on the web because we have an app. No one's going to install your app because not many people have the guts to force people to install an app and take away functionality from the web. Pinterest has the guts. They also have one of the highest grossing apps on all app stores, so they can do it. The problem is this graph is not visible to any of you. I can make up, no one installs any apps at all. The graph actually says that half of smartphone owners in the States, which you can assume is relatively representative of the UK, install 0 apps per month on average. People don't install apps because they don't have space, they don't want to give up their personal app drawer to installing an app. I uninstalled the Facebook app before I deleted Facebook and used the Facebook web app because it was faster than the Facebook app. Twitter I'm still sticking with because they haven't got push notifications right, but I will uninstall the native app if I can. Anyone else feel the same way? Oh, about not many. Oh, on my own.
All Android users.
All Android users, yes. Because they're not bought into the Borg, says the man with a Mac. So the top 8 apps installed across all devices are all owned by Facebook and Google. This is a hard market to get into unless you're throwing billions of pounds into promoting an app and getting people to install it and stick with it. That's the hardest thing. People uninstall apps if they look it in the app drawer and realize they haven't used it in a while. I don't know about you, but every now and then I have an app purge. Every now and then I have an app purge where I uninstall one app and I think I'm going to scroll through and uninstall all the other apps I haven't used in a while. And that really upsets the people who deploy those apps to your devices. And this is a pink message just about Perry. Because he's slow and has a slow device, he expects a slow experience. And it's kind of a sensible, logical assumption to make. You've bought a £50 Chinese Android phone, £250 Chinese Android phone, and expected a relatively poor experience because it's a third of the price of a Samsung flagship. But that's not true, because when you're using an Android device, as a website, you're not competing with other websites. You're competing with native apps, which have lots of development resource, making them fast on Android devices. And a whole Android ecosystem built around making those apps load and run fast. So mobile websites on Android devices are competing with native apps. So the expectations of your users are set not by other websites they're interacting with. If they load a link from a Twitter feed and open the Twitter web view to load your web page and it's slow, that's going to be really hard after browsing through Twitter feeds, clicking the like button, which gives you instant feedback, even though it may not have told Twitter that you've clicked the like button. So it has this disastrous consequence of you think it's not loaded within 1 second, so it's bad, I'm going to go away. And of course, we get to the last stage of bargaining. You can see how I'm trying to squeeze these things into this story. Can we pay someone to fix this? And the problem is it's not easy to fix performance on Android. You can't pay someone to get every one of your customers a better Android device. So no is the answer to this. And this leads directly to anger. Why is Android so slow? And it's actually a really simple answer. This is another slide you can't see. On the left is the single core performance of iPhone devices. The scale is non-linear, helpful. An iPhone 6s got a 2,500 score. A Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge got a 1,300 score. Samsung owns their own chip manufacturing. They make their own processors, the Exynos 8-core super duper things. Apple does the same, 2 cores, or maybe 3 cores if you're lucky. The point is that Android devices focus on multi-core performance for gaming, for multi-threaded apps, not for web. Web is inherently, mainly, single-threaded, unless you're doing clever things with Web Worker and Service Worker, or Flash, which doesn't work anymore. So in general, Android devices benchmark in JavaScript about 3 to 4 times worse than iOS devices. That's why it's so slow, which is like bad rendering. JavaScript performance, single-threaded, bad. Image rendering, single-threaded, really bad. DOM creation and manipulation, single-threaded, really bad. And they're quite important things for the web. And this leads us directly to depression. I've decided not to put anything about single-page apps in this presentation because I've been told off for being too negative about them in the past. Yeah, Ember, Angular, React, Preact. Actually, Preact, so optimizing for everything is really hard, and that's what we're trying to do. Does anyone recognize this man? Shout it out. Yes. Anyone know what he's famous for? And you can't say the same. Yeah. He's the evil demon that invented responsive web design. And there's actually a little thing that says he's the evil demon that created responsive web design off the bottom of that picture. Anyone agree with me there? Or is this all? Nope. Oh. And this is my easy, simple segue into AMP. Anyone heard of AMP? Everybody, accelerated mobile pages. Anyone think AMP is a good thing? Publisher, publisher, publisher. So AMP is it's a mixed bag, right? It has its pros and cons. This is the blurb about AMP. Reading on the mobile web is a slow, clunky, and frustrating experience. This is Google, because it's open source project, but the core contributors are all Googlers, saying that the mobile web is broken. Whose fault is that? Angular. So the idea being that we have to generate different versions of our websites using semi-proprietary, not Facebook, HTML, AMP images, proprietary web components, and then use JavaScript to rewrite them, another issue, to make the web faster on mobile devices. This grates with me, and that does not lead to acceptance. So not many of my clients have moved to AMP. The big publishing houses all have, mainly because AMP gives you a shortcut into the main carousel, the first result on Google News and Google search results. So if you don't do it, you're actually going behind the rest of your competitors and your peers. So what can we do about this? The best thing for Android performance that we've seen so far when it relates to business metrics is reducing DOM complexity. Anyone know how many DOM nodes is on their homepage? 1,400. Good number. Sosta did this thing with Pat Meenan from Web Page Test, and they machine learned data from all of their RUM content to see what the biggest contributing factors to conversion rate. And DOM node count, or DOM complexity, was the biggest correlating factor with conversion. So the little spike up there is people who have really optimized conversion pages that just have a, buy now or PayPal, click here. But then beyond about 2,000 DOM nodes, the conversion likelihood goes down. Tell me why you're laughing.
I know ours, because I did this recently. It's about 4,500.
Nice. That's not the worst I've seen, as we'll find out now. Oh, it is the worst. Oh. Has anyone used YellowLab before? YellowLab.tools. Awesome. It's an open source project. The link's down there. I'd recommend rolling it yourself because the web version has been a little bit flaky lately. But it uses Phantom and calculates these kind of metrics for you, and you can build it into your CI. So you can count how many DOM elements there are. You could also do it in a custom metric in Web Page Test, so you could plot it using Speed Tracker. Hey. But things like DOM accesses, how many times does jQuery try to query the DOM? How many times does it fail while the DOM is being built? All of these things are disastrous for performance when you're trying to build the DOM on a low performance device. Serving the right images. Who here is a wholehearted believer in image source set and sizes? Oh, that's about half the room. Awesome. Who's managed to deploy it and automated it? About half of the people who said yes before. It's not easy, right? Anyone think it's easy? No, the reason we don't all do it is because it's not easy, because the markup is really complex with image source set and sizes. And if you have maybe 50 images in your site and you want to have every single breakpoint for every single device, you're not going to do it because your HTML document becomes 100 kilobytes big. It becomes easier if your clients' browsers support client hints. Anyone using client hints? No. So client hints, with the request, you'll say, I'm this DPR, I'm 2x, and the viewport width is y. And what's the actual width that it gives you? Go on, the person who's implemented it.
Can't remember.
Does it give you the width of the actual element of the image? If none of us know, then
If you size it, no, viewport width will give you the width of the device.
Yep.
Width will give you, if you use sizes, will give you the width of the image.
So you can use
sizes, it doesn't.
100 VW to say this is 100% of my viewport width.
Yeah.
And you have to code that for all of your different breakpoints.
That's why you use image manager.
That's why I use Image Manager, which is Akamai product. You don't have to do it yourself. Maybe you could use, oh, Akamai's not on there. Kentico is a CMS. Anyone use Kentico in the past? Version 10 supports responsive images out of the box. Imgix, Cloudinary, Scientia Mobile, Image Engine all do stuff that supports client hints. Does Image Manager support client hints? And that's why it's not on the list.
Don't need it. We use
Don't enhance. Not even progressively enhance. No, don't do that. That's the only animated GIF in this whole presentation. Oh, that's a lie. It's the first. So The Guardian, which was famous for progressive enhancement as a methodology, is rubbish now. This is an article about Theresa May and Brexit, so it's pretty rubbish to start with. But it renders in like 1.5 seconds on a Moto G1 at 100 megabits per second, zero latency. Native connection throttling from Dulles. And I know Pat pays a lot for his internet connection into Dulles. So your network couldn't get any faster. And yet the text doesn't render until about 2.5 seconds in. It actually renders once and then disappears because their web fonts are a bit weird. Then you get the "you should install this app" banner. And then your CPU, your main thread, is locked until 14 seconds into the page load. That's because they progressively add all of their third-party content, all of their JavaScript. And that means the scrolling experience within that 14 seconds, it's quite a long time for a single article, is horrendous, very janky. So progressive enhancement as a concept works great until you put it onto low-end Android devices, at which point you should just stop enhancing. And Dean will cover this in more detail next time, but it's time to bite the PWA bullet. Has anyone done so yet? No. No one's deploying PWAs apart from housing.com, which did it for your personal site. Commercially. Why don't you put your hand up?
Sorry.
Thank you. So PWAs now, second animated GIF and last, let you install from the home screen, install to the home screen like they've always done, but the latest version of Chrome 57 also treats it like a native app. So it's now on the home screen. You can drag it into info.
Sorry.
You get information about it. It's in your app drawer now. So from your general consumer point of view, it is an app. It can be uninstalled. And it doesn't have any of the browser frame, the browser Chrome, as PWA shouldn't, as long as you get your web manifest right. So now is the time where PWA is about to explode in terms of their compatibility with native apps, in terms of getting people to understand that this is kind of the same experience as a native app. And we've done it for AMP. We've developed a different version of our website specifically for Google and Bing. Why don't we do it for ourselves to develop our own PWAs? So housing.com use Nginx to push their requests to 2 different stacks. One is an Android-specific PWA stack. One is their normal responsive web design stack. If an Android device which is capable of rendering a PWA tries to access a site, it will get sent to the PWA and will have the full PWA experience. If there's a device that doesn't support the full PWA experience, it gets the normal website. So win-win. And we can do it really easily. There's Akamai.
The old logo.
It's the first result on Google Images. So at the edge, using Varnish or Fastly, the commercial version, CDN version of Varnish, or Akamai, or basically any good CDN provider, you can do device detection at the edge and switch your customers' requests to the right version of the website, which means you can cache at the edge the best experience for the user. So it is doable now without rolling your own Nginx config. Once you've done that, we really need to test with real devices. So using something like Speed Tracker, you could use the Dulles real devices, but they're coming from America, so the performance is a bit weird, even if you do have a CDN. So you can roll your own devices, and the book, which is linked down there, using web page test gives you instructions on how to roll your own web page test instance. And it's really cheap to buy Perry's phone. He'll probably put it on eBay after today.
No, I won't.
It's a good phone, right?
Yeah, it's good.
British Museum will be after.
You can roll your own web page test instance with real devices. It's actually relatively low maintenance. We've got a couple in the office, and it's cheap to get up and running. And you can use something like Speed Tracker or a commercial alternative to get those results and plot them over time. So every time you roll a build, get it loaded on a real Android device and do things like count the number of DOM nodes, count how long it takes to render, and count how long the browser thread is busy for, even after the page is loaded. That's a really important metric. So to get great performance on Android, you have to realize that analytics is fake news. We like tweeting about fake news. Develop a user-first strategy. I don't really know what that means, but I thought I should put it in as number 2. Mobile first is wrong, right? Because
that should be number 1, shouldn't it?
but
It's not a user-first strategy.
the joke is more important. So user first, what are your customers actually trying to access your website using? If you see your sessions on Android are high, but your page views are low, it means they're starting, but not completing. Or you're probably missing half of them anyway because your website takes longer than 3 seconds to load. Separate front end from back end. So Headless Commerce, anyone use Headless Commerce as a concept, not as a product? Anyone here have an e-commerce website or work on one? Good. So Headless Commerce is the idea of you have a commerce engine and you have APIs and you have a front end, basically, and you can get your affiliates to sell your products for you. Why didn't you do that with everything? So The Guardian do it actually. They have an endpoint for articles, an endpoint for comments, which means their front end is built independently of their back end and just makes API calls, which means developing a progressive web app is simple because it's just a new front end that talks to the right back end. Simple-ish. Embrace the bleeding edge. So this is things like client hints, which takes me on to the point 5. Client hints is hard to write yourself, so use a third party to do it. Apparently, Image Manager doesn't support it, so go with something else.
Some Chrome users that it works anyway.
Well, we're talking about Android. Anyone from Samsung here? There we go. Chrome is the only browser. And measure the things that matter. And it's really hard. You should measure everything. Etsy's idea is to measure everything and plot everything, and just in case something changes. But measuring things like scroll depth is important. Measuring things like jankiness is important. Measuring things like how long the CPU is blocked until the page is complete, and maybe another few seconds afterwards, is also important. But I can't tell you what's important for you to measure. It's things that have an effect on your business metrics, viewership, scroll depth, that kind of thing. The Perry Dyble's picky. So you've been great, and I've been Simon. And there's how you can get in touch with me. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. That was good, wasn't it? I'm always the butt of jokes. I don't mind. And to be quite honest, this G4 is great. I love it. Right. The reason that he needs like a thing is because he uses Tinder all the time. But oh, okay. Right. Do we have any questions for Simon? Well, we've got a few minutes before the food's going to arrive. So, any questions? Feel free. No.
Awesome.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It's more of a personal question. Sorry.
Are you single? No, I'm sorry. I'm a front-end web developer, and it's just you sound quite passionate about what you do. I'm just wondering how you got into it. How did you decide you want to work in that area.
Used to work for IBM.
Yeah, that's true. And it's actually a great story, which no one else will find interesting. So I worked.
That's why I was like,
yeah.
how did you do it?
We could take this offline, but the pizza's not here yet. So I worked for IBM, and I was doing pre-sale stuff because they had a good graduate scheme. And then I was working from home, and my wife was working from home, and we were living in somewhere that we didn't really want to live. So we moved to Surrey, which was nice and near my family. And about 2 weeks later, after I updated my LinkedIn profile with my new location, I got a recruiter call me and said, "Do you want a job in the village that you live in, doing tech sales?" Which is, tech and sales, which is kind of what I want to do. And I said no. A week later, I went for an interview, and 3 days later, I had the job. It was a 5-minute walk away, and I had no real previous interest in web performance. But I was a web developer, so I developed 5 or 6 websites before. And that's my story. And that was 4.5 years ago. So I've been doing web performance ever since.
Sorry to have said, with the increasing use of mobile devices, it's become way more important than it was before. It was something that, you sort of didn't really take that seriously.
Yeah.
And it's just become more and more relevant every day, it seems.
It absolutely is, and that's why this group exists.
Yeah.
So spread the word, tell them about it. Yeah.
Cool.
Hello. Thanks very much for your talk. Very entertaining. Just wondering if you've got any tips for people who can't afford your services on
I don't sell any services.
for surfacing Android usage or any ways of kind of just tracking that down and revealing what's really going on.
Do you use a CDN?
No. So in this particular instance, I guess I'd be looking to work with like Shopify. So it's a hosted thing. So I've only got access to certain components of it. But
so your best bet then is to use GA, Google Analytics, because it's easy to integrate with Shopify, and something like Werfel.js, which is Scientia Mobile's free device detection library, which plugs directly into GA. So if you look in Google Analytics, you'll see iPhone, iPad. Werfel actually gives you iPhone 6, iPhone 6 Plus, iPhone 7 Plus, iPhone 7S. If there's not a 7S yet, there will be. So it actually breaks it down by device and including Android. The problem is that if there's 25,000 unique potential devices, the long tail on Android is really hard. So it's tricky. So you can group by OS, but analytics is fake news anyway. So you can compare your analytics, you can't, but with your server logs or your CDN logs, and use something like Splunk or any kind of log aggregator to plot the number of requests by user agent against the number of analytics tags by user agent, and you'll see a discrepancy. And that'll be bigger for Android devices than iOS devices, and that gives you an idea of how much data you're missing. But otherwise, it's using the analytics products that you can get for free. So GA with Werfel.js.
okay.
WURFL.
Okay, any more? Yeah.
I was wondering, what do you think of things like AWS device farm, or like in Chrome you can pretend to be your mobile, things like that?
Yeah. So what do I think of emulating devices or using real devices in the cloud?
AWS has a service where you can launch all kind of devices.
Yeah, didn't Akamai have a service where you could do that called MobiTest?
Still exists.
Oh, does it? Oh, God.
Yeah, it's like a really poor implementation of WebPerf.
That was Michael saying it's a really poor implementation.
Well, you can't really dig into results at very high level, but we do have London devices. If you do want to test with a London device, you can use MobiTest.
So I haven't used the device farm AWS stuff before. I don't know if it gives how much data it gives you on the actual device performance. So the problem with emulating a device, I'll start with that one, is you're using a whole different architecture, different memory structure, different processor, level 1 caching, level 2 caching, all that kind of stuff. When I'm using my Windows machine, I have to throttle by 10x in the performance tab in the latest version of Chrome to get close to a Moto G4 performance. And this is a Core i3 2-core, 4-thread, 4-year-old machine. So throttle by 10x or 20x to at least exacerbate the issues and see where the time is being spent. But you can't beat using real devices. Soon, hopefully in the next 12 months or so, Apple will support WebDriver on iOS mobile. So they've rolled out WebDriver for Safari on macOS. They haven't rolled it out for Safari on iOS. Once that happens, we'll be able to drive tests programmatically through an API without jailbreaking an iPhone or an iPad. then we'll be able to build robust mobile device labs.
I know what I'm buying him for Christmas. I really do. A G5. No.
It will be out.
It'll be out by then, probably, I'm sure. Right, any more? No? Right, in that case, well, just one more round of applause and thank you for Simon's great talk as usual. I can take the jokes on the chin. Anyway, so everyone, hope you stay around, have a few beers, and hopefully the pizzas will arrive soon, and there'll be plenty to go around. Anyway, thank you all for coming. Spread the word about the group. It only works for people like Simon and Eduardo coming along to give us talks, and for you for attending. So thank you very much, and see you all again in the future. Cheers. Bye.